Well, here we are again. It's actually Monday, but this is the video for Tuesday. Let's see, today is the 12th, so tomorrow will be the 13th. So this will be the video for the 13th, and we have Steve Hart on with us again. Steve, I'm glad to have you on recording with me again today. I thank you for agreeing on such short notice.
I'm always here.
You've announced that your title is Consciousness is More Than Knowledge. So I'm going to just turn the microphone over to you and we'll have a conversation.
When I'm trying to understand consciousness, and several years ago when I first come into this new awareness of my spirituality and my connection to spirit, I come to an understanding that it was through consciousness that I had this experience. And it was not just knowledge, because I had learned so much through my Christian rearing and other influences in my life. And I found out I had to spend all this time letting go of all that stuff, letting go of some of this knowledge. And even in the past 8 years or so, through this new awareness that I'm experiencing right now, I've had to learn to let go of some other things that I've picked up, because what we perceive as truth, whatever our thought patterns are about what is truth, you have to be open enough to let go of what you think is true so that you can evolve into a higher level of awareness, because our thoughts create a vibration. And whatever our thought patterns are, that's the level that we're vibrating at. And I wanted to experience love, joy, and happiness, and that's one thing to say that, but it's another thing to have the experience. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is the emphasis has not been based upon knowledge itself, but more about the experience. So there's a resonance between the mind and the heart. They have to be in harmony, and you have to learn to open them up at the same time. Now, I'm not saying that knowledge is bad. It's just that knowledge alone is not enough. And you and I know the scripture implies that knowledge can make you proud, whereas love will cause you to grow and to open up and to become healthier, more, expand your awareness. And that's the scripture. And
it cuts the edges off of our rigidity.
What was that?
It softens our rigidity.
Yes, definitely so. Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest. One of my greatest challenges is my pride, especially my spiritual pride. There have been many times in the last 8 years where I've had to apologize to people for letting pride rule my heart instead of letting love, and trying to prove that I was right. And I convinced people I was right and they were wrong. But after a while, they said, "You know what? You're right. I don't like you anymore." And that's what this is all about. I mean, the fact that you reached out just recently in your videos where you were talking about extending the olive branch,
Oh yeah, I was going to ask you if you had seen that video.
Yeah, that was coming from your heart, and yeah, in your mind you knew you felt like you were doing the right thing, but it's a heart issue that we have that we need to open up to.
Well, it was beautiful last night. I went to church yesterday at Unity of Melbourne. Then I attended one of their workshops in the afternoon, early afternoon, and I took a nap, and I went back to the pod and got to meet with Sue Bailey and a bunch of people that I haven't connected with in a good while.
Wow. Yeah.
They're going to actually host, the pod is going to host we're going to try to get the other two Unities, Merritt Island and Melbourne, to join in a benefit for me. But in any case, yeah,
cool.
It is about letting go. And I've also had some dialogue with Friar Newberg today. So it's email communications, but we've been in communication with each other, and I unblocked him so that he's now able to make comments on my videos. That was a result of some of the heart stuff that was going on with me. Actually, it started on Saturday, but went through yesterday and showed up in today's video.
Don't get me wrong. I think the brain and our mind has a value. It helps put the brakes on when it comes to the heart, because if we were just to completely listen to our heart, completely open up our heart completely, we'd be out of balance, and there would not be that resonance I was referring to a while ago. So the brain has its value, but it's more like the brake that's being put on. The brain is trying to figure out and comprehend what's going on, and that's where we get stuck, because consciousness, the brain doesn't quite understand. Our mind doesn't understand consciousness. It only understands consciousness in concepts, in words, and a belief system. And that can change. But it doesn't mean
It must change.
That's right, it must change. And when we really connect with consciousness, with source energy, we're connecting through our heart. And then our brain tries to interpret what that is and tries to understand it. So when people are trying to understand what the heck is going on out here in the world, the only way to really understand it is by connecting from within to consciousness, through your heart, and and it will bring revelation to the mind and help you understand about yourself, what's going on within you, and then you understand what's going on out here. But if you're trying to interpret what's going on in the world without this connection I'm talking about, you're going to stumble all over yourself. And this is where people get aggravated and angry and frustrated, and that negative energy is destructive, and it does not really allow us to open up and see the truth as it really is. So.
Yeah, and to see things as they really are, and to be able to tell ourselves, I think everything begins with telling ourselves the truth. We can't really be true to our brother and sister until we're first true to ourselves. And that's why it says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's not you just love your neighbor. You put that in context and it gets all twisted out of proportion. Because if you don't love yourself first, there's part of you that's incapable of actually loving your neighbor.
That's right. It's definitely so. So I'm going to remind everybody, as I remind myself, to do that connection from within and learn how to open up your heart. And it's hard to do when you're feeling the frustration and the anger and the feeling of deception, being deceived, feeling as though you are enslaved or you are the victim. When you're in feeling that vibration, it's hard for the brain or the mind to comprehend. Now, I keep saying the brain, the mind, because the brain's obviously an organ. The mind is not just in our head; it's all part of our being. But there's the point is that it's the heart energy. Even when they understand the organs of the heart, the vibration energy of the heart is higher than the brain, and some people find that surprising, but that's true.
Yeah, I've actually read that very thing, that the heart has a much higher vibration than the brain.
And if you don't have your heart, your brain isn't going to function much longer. You have to have it has to be functioning. So, and how that heart works. I mean, medically, they really don't even know what keeps the heart alive, what keeps it pumping. It is spirit. We're spiritual beings having this human physical experience. And as long as we're in these bodies, then the heart will keep pumping.
Yep, and mine is still pumping, even though
yes, and I'm happy that
very well earlier in the year.
I know. So, I'm talking about the fact that I've had to learn to start experiencing this awareness, not just in my mind, but in my heart. And so when I think about concepts of spirit itself, I have to open up my heart at the same time. And even though I can go to a workshop or hear someone speaking and go, yeah, that's a good thought, that's a good idea, I never thought of that before. Those kind of things in my mind help me open up my heart and know that I'm on the right path. But it's the experience of the heart energy that really makes the transformation within me. Then my belief system follows. Do you have that experience?
Yeah, it starts with the heart. But I was thinking as you were talking, as soon as we put it into words, it has to go from the heart to the mind, because the heart can't speak. It's through it's through the mind that our mouth starts moving and words come out.
And that's why we have this resonance. But if the heart is saying one thing and the brain is saying another, or the mind is saying another thing, that's where you have conflict. If it's out of balance, it's not in harmony with each other, and that's where people have these ill experiences and the frustration. But you're right. If we can let the mind relax, that's why meditation is so important, because the mind needs to rest. It needs to relax. And when you go into meditation, you're allowing your heart to begin to feed you. Spirit consciousness, I believe, comes in through the heart and moves up through the center of the chakras into the higher, to the crown chakras and so forth. And then it goes out, and the energy flows out and comes back up through our lower part of our spine and creates this torus, as they have explained to us, the flow of energy. And now some people teach that it comes from above down through, and I'm thinking, well, okay, there might be some truth to that, but it actually has to, it's heart-centered, because that's the energy that we're inspired to live with, which is love. And it's not just all about knowledge, because if knowledge alone was going to save us and transform us,
it would have already happened.
It would already happened. That's right. And so it's a matter of us opening our hearts along with our understanding of our minds. And there, as you well know, Ron, that there are moments when you don't understand anything. You just have the experience.
And it's hard to put in words at those times. I mean,
yeah.
I think we've all had experiences where we experience something, and being able to communicate it is a challenge.
That's true.
Yeah. So, yeah, I know I've had it, and I know you've had it, and I think most everybody that's been into meditation at all has experienced exactly what I'm talking about.
And speaking of that, again, I encourage people to spend time in meditation. I find sometimes I don't always know exactly what happens when I'm doing my meditations, but it's not until later, or the lack of my meditation, that I realize, boy, I needed to spend some time in meditation because the day seems to be out of balance, or whatever it is. But when I do spend the time in meditation, I have this centering balance, and I seem to comprehend and be able to find the day much easier, and I seem to get the download messages that I need for that day. And it doesn't have to be
very easy to get distracted in the world that we live in.
Very much so, especially for the people who have 9-to-5 jobs. I'm grateful that I don't have that type of job, and that I have the flexibility to have the freedom. But I believe everybody should have that freedom. If you want to know my opinion, I was doing a workshop this last Saturday over in Orlando, and somebody asked me about, what do you do for work, and I said, well, I really don't have a job per se. I do work, and I do have multiple streams of income coming in, but I've created that, and it gives me the freedom to do what I want. And I said, I believe that everybody should be able to have that freedom. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have to have a job, or everybody has a work to do. It's just a matter of what we define as a job or work.
Yeah, well, I don't have a job, but I work every day, even when I was really, really sick.
Yeah.
I continue to do my best, even though sometimes it fell short even of my own desire.
Yeah. So in my life coaching, I help people find what it is that their purpose is, and what kind of work they do. And then when I talk with people, I help them by asking questions, because the answer is within them. All I have to do is just help them ask better questions. And quite often, all of a sudden, the lights will go off on inside, and they'll go, oh, that's what I need to be doing. That's what I really wanted. I never realized that's what I wanted, And then when you pursue that, if that desire is true within the heart of that individual, whatever it is their desire, it'll manifest itself much quicker, and far beyond their beliefs sometimes. And there isn't always a lot of income I don't make nearly as much money as I used to, but there is the freedom and there's the joy and the happiness of having whatever that work is,
Yeah. Well, it was interesting. I sat in the workshop on Sunday afternoon, and as fate would have it, I was sitting next to a young lady who just graduated college, or this year, and she's got another job now. But she's really, I was very impressed by how her heart is longing for the spiritual experience, and that's why she started going to Unity. And I guess her boyfriend is also involved, although he has to work Saturday night, so he doesn't usually get out of bed that early because he's working it till like the midnight hour or something. But it was a breath of fresh air just sitting next to her and listening to her express with delight some of the input that she's getting and some of the revelations that are coming through to her. And she's just like, I'm guessing her age. I didn't ask her age, of course, but she just graduated college. So she probably is, 21, 22 years old, maybe 23 at the most.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It was so inspiring just listening to her share it a little bit that we had the opportunity to share in conversation.
Since you brought that up, that's another thing. I caution people if they come to me about furthering their education and spending a lot of money and going to a college, because sometimes there's an illusion of what that further education is going to give you versus what you already possess. People quite often have within them the ability to accomplish whatever it is they want to accomplish without having to go to college or further their education. At the same time, there are some things you have to have a degree to be able to perform and do. But, we get so close-minded and we put ourselves in a box so often, and we don't understand what it is that we have within us. I mean, there are treasures, gifts and strengths that are buried deep within our hearts and our mind that we often do not know that they're there for us to capitalize on, to actually use, to make a living at. And when you start doing some self-discovery and finding out what's inside, and it's brought out into the open, and you see it, you go, oh my, I never realized that, yeah, that's what I do. That's really easy for me. I never realized that was such that brought me such thrill and such joy, And then when you start looking at the possibilities about how you can turn it into an actual work where you can make money, what better job would you have, to do something like that,
Well, I still look for a system where we don't worry about the money part, but that we're not.
That's true.
We're not there yet.
No.
But I don't know if you ever saw, there was this guy that channeled, I forget who he channeled, but he said that Earth is the only planet in the universe that uses money.
Right.
There's no other one, and it is a slavery system.
Yeah. And that's why it came up in the workshop on Saturday. We were talking about money, and they were asking me about my job, and you're right. It can be confusing, but you have to go back to what Jesus talked about. He said, "Look at the lilies of the field and the birds of the air." He says, you think that worrying about, what you're going to eat, what clothes you're going to wear is going to make you better or better your life or make your life longer. And he talks about the simplicity of believing that Spirit provides for you. Now, I know that's a huge leap.
It's a huge leap for most people because of our brainwashing.
That's right.
We first have to admit that we've been brainwashed.
Yeah. And it's right after that when Jesus said, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added unto you." So, and I found that to be true. That is because the misconception is that I didn't know what the kingdom of God was. I didn't. It's like this woo-woo thing off in the sky or whatever it is. We don't realize that what that means is it's an internal sense of being, of living in that vibration of love, joy, and peace, and having that as a part of your awareness in physical form so that you can exhibit and use and give these gifts away, because the gifts that we have are to be given. The only value they have is when we give to other people what it is we have to give. And everybody has a unique gift. But when you try to wrap your brain around all this stuff, we stumble all over ourselves. And we have these ideas of what we think it should be, because as you just said, we get programmed. The world has a way of programming us and telling us who we are, and we let the world define who we are instead of going within and letting spirit define who we are.
Yeah, I watch it with my grandkids. I mean, my grandson is 7 now, and he's still young enough to have a bit of the innocent mind. My 2 granddaughters are a little bit older, 10 and almost 13. And they're becoming, well, the one is already, well, they're both young ladies, right? But you can see the regimentation of their minds. You can see that they're not free like they were when they were just a few years younger.
Right.
Something changes, something shifts. And I don't know what causes that, but I'm observing it by having my family live here with me. So,
well, and I'm sure that your other listeners have witnessed the same thing. There is a great deal of insight when we witness the innocence of children, small children, and their freedom, and we have to ask ourselves, what went wrong, or how is it that we allowed the world to define who we are and to manipulate our mind to conform to the world. And so
if we get pressed into the mold, whether we like it or not. And
oh yeah, the mold is there. The question is whether or not you want to be conformed to that and get pressed into it, or step away, or most of us, like you and I, have learned how to let go and break out of that.
We're still learning. Well, I don't know. I haven't arrived yet. That's
well, I haven't arrived either, but I've experienced a lot of freedom compared to what I was 15 years ago.
Oh yes, of course, me.
Yeah,
too.
so that I'm rejoicing in all that, and knowing that there's more coming, for more freedom for me to experience. So that's that I get excited about that, and you and I have experienced this spiritual awareness. At the same time, we've looked out here in the world and saw how ugly it was, and how that is beginning to transform now. That the negative energy is now beginning to fall apart, and the whole.
Well, at least more people are aware that it is negative energy.
But that's how it happens in my mind. The more you see, that's the thing. We think the first thought is, when we experience these things, to go out there and fight and resist against what's going on out there. But what I believe is happening just by it coming into our consciousness and becoming aware that we've been enslaved, and that there are people out there putting forth this negative energy. That awareness alone starts shifting at everything. When it comes into our awareness, we create a vibration through that. That's what I believe. That's what I'm experiencing.
Yeah, well, there's some people that are still trying to measure everything by the old paradigm. And I've noticed that in dialogue with people even recently, that they're still trying to make the interpretation of what's happening based on old paradigm thinking. And it's not in the same category or the same ballpark. You have to be able to transcend that, and you can't explain that logically to people. The leap has to come from something you experience in your heart. It's not a mind game, as you've been saying.
And an example of that is when you go to a movie, and you go to watch a movie, go in the theater, and you get caught up in the movie, and you have this energy, emotion, or feeling about the movie, if it's a good movie. And when you walk out, you have to kind of reacclimate yourself to the fact that you're back in the world again. You're not living in the movie, but the feeling you're having, it starts to begin to shift your thinking and to
bring tears to your eyes in some cases.
Yeah. And then
laughter.
Yeah, or laughter. And then the other, to take this even further, if we all experience something that's, I'll use the word catastrophic in our own life, be it a death of a loved one, or an accident of some sort. When you go through that, there's an energy shift again, and if your heart is in the right place, it brings to you a greater awareness of what is the truth, just like you have gone through with your surgery. I mean,
yeah, well, the lady that was teaching the workshop on Sunday afternoon, I mean, she had the experience where for a year to 2 years, she was unable to minister anymore because things were happening in her life that were shaking everything apart in her family and stuff like that. And she had to find her center all over again that she thought she had before, but it was because of the things that were happening with her children and even in her own personal life.
And she's just one example of what all of us are experiencing to some various degrees. So that's what I'm saying. If you're trying to comprehend how this is going to happen with just your mind, it may not make any sense. But spirit, your higher self, knows exactly what is going on and knows how to give you direction and give you an understanding, which comes through the heart and then on into the brain and to the mind. So
yeah, well, it depends on surrender, and the idea of surrender to the rational mind is the stupidest thing that they could ever think of, or yeah. Surrender. What are you talking about?
Yeah, why would I want to do that? You may not remember this, but there was a moment several years ago when I was dealing with some fear of surrendering, because I still had in this thought in my mind, if I totally surrendered to spirit, it may ask me to do something I didn't want to do. No, I'm serious. And I came into my awareness, and I found this resistance to going, what if I am asked to do something I really don't want to do, like get rid of my car, get rid of my job, or get rid of whatever it was I was enjoying at the time. And then all of a sudden it was brought to my awareness that if I'm a spiritual being and spirit's asking me to do this, it knows exactly what I really want, and it will bring me greater joy. And to let go of that fear, it's only fear is what it was I was experiencing. And when I let go and I really opened up and surrendered and said, okay, I'm trusting spirit, trusting God, trusting that my heart is not going to deceive me, which it will not, as long as my heart is in the right place. And it brings me everything I ever wanted, everything. I just have to, like you said, you'd have to learn how to surrender. You have to open up.
And that's not easy for the human ego.
No, the ego doesn't understand.
Our whole early life is spent developing the ego, and then as we get a little bit older, it's all about letting it go.
And the ego's there for a reason. It's there to protect us from the world and things around the world. And until we come into this awareness, the ego serves its purpose. But as we come into this awareness, the ego's got to take a back seat,
Yeah, it has to come into balance and harmony.
Right.
It's not a matter of getting rid of everything. It's about harmonizing the whole thing.
Right. Yeah.
So, and that's hard to understand until you've been called or experienced it or something. It's
right. Yeah, if your listeners have not read Eckhart Tolle's book, New Heaven and New Earth, I would highly recommend that book when it comes to dealing with the ego and understanding how to bring this balance and this awareness. That book really helped me. There are obviously numerous sources out there that will teach you what's being taught in that book, but I thought he did a great job with that book. So,
yeah, I've read at least a few of Eckhart Tolle's books, so I agree with you. There's a lot of inspirational writing out there that is very beneficial for those that are willing to expand their mind and maybe read some things that maybe are outside their normal way of thinking and seeing things, certainly outside of what they've been taught in most schools.
Yep. That book shook my cage. It really did. It took me a while to, because I was part of a book study during that time, and that really helped me. But it took me a while to maneuver through some of that information. And like you said, letting go and surrendering.
Yeah, well, that's what we're all learning, and it has been about 30 minutes or just a little bit shy of 30 minutes now.
Oh, my, yeah.
Believe it or not. So I appreciate you taking the time once again to have a conversation with me, and I'm hoping that things that we've shared will ring a bell and turn on a light in somebody else, because that's the whole intent of this.
Yes, right.
So thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Much appreciated, and again, namaste.
Namaste.